Well, welcome back. Today we're looking at hazards. Uh, so we've created all the sprites. We've created the collectibles. Now we need to create hazards. But in order to do this, we're going to have to have a controller. If you've done any programming in GameMaker, you'll realize that controllers are essential if you want to control behaviors that affect the entire game. So we're going to add a controller to our game right now, and what's weird about controllers is they don't require a sprite, but they do have to be in the room that they're trying to control. So we're going to put that under miscellaneous, and we're going to add it right here. We'll say create object, and we'll just call this one object controller, or obj underscore controller. So what should the controller do? Well, we'll make a create event, and we're going to create some variables here. So variable creation. Let's see. Here's assign a variable. Here's declare a variable. That's just for temporary variables. Here's set a global variable. Get. So I think it's this one. Assign a variable. GameMaker is kind of weird that you don't have to actually declare a variable. You just start using it and then it magically appears. If you do this, this variable is then available to, I guess, anywhere in the controller object, I guess. This variable exists in there. So it's like an instance variable for an object. Oh, this one is actually a global variable. So we're going to have to create a global variable actually. So this one, set global variable. And in the old version of GameMaker, you have to actually physically put the word global in there. But since they've already differentiated it here and they've already said set global variable, I don't think you have to do that anymore. So we're going to create a variable called step count. And this is the number of frames since the beginning of the game. We want to set the value to 0. Don't click relative here because it doesn't exist yet. If you do, it tries to add it to a non-existent variable and then the game crashes. Another thing you want to do is we want to add a step event. Step event, and in that we want to increment or add one to this new global variable each time. So here we would say our variable again step count. This time we're going to put the number 1 here, and we are going to say relative. So every time there's a frame or there's a step, then this variable is going to get a new number. Now, these global variables can be accessed anywhere in the game from any object. Typically, when I write code, I avoid global variables like the plague because they cause lots of problems when it comes to debugging. But they're also really convenient. So they're like, yeah, programmers tend to shun them, but there are times when they're appropriate. This is probably one of those times, although you could probably figure out a way to avoid this. But in this case, it's going to be nice. We're just counting up the number of frames. Hopefully, there won't be a rogue process in the game that messes this variable up. Because if there is, it's going to be impossible to find. All right, so let's go to our Zool object then. And here we are. And what we want to do is, in the create event for Zool, we want to set this step count to 0. So let's go to our create event. And if you remember on these assigned variable things, yeah, see how step count is there already? It says Zool has its own step count, but we want to use the global one. Yeah, so we want to replace this one. So we're going to get rid of this one. I wonder how you get rid of this. I guess you say minus. So now that variable is not, that belonged to the Zool object, and now we're going to be replacing it with our global variable. So if I remember correctly, let's see, we can look here, set global variable. We're going to add that maybe right there, and we're going to call it step count. But this time, this is a different step count variable that's global, and again, in this step count, we're going to add 1 to it, which seems kind of odd. Why would be adding it here and also in the controller step count? Let me figure that out. Hang on just a sec. Yeah, so that doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to just whack this. But you have to remember too that there's a step event here in Zool that also increments the step count, and we're doing that in the controller now, so we can get rid of that increment or adding to the step count here. So make sure to go in and delete the step count variable in the create event, and then delete the incrementation of the step count in Object Zool in the step event. All right, so we got that cleaned up. Now we go to Object Zool land, and here we're going to go to the end step event. Boy, this is complicated. And then what do we do? Oh yeah, remember in here we had this way of every 8 frames we want to play a sound. I think that's what we were doing. But let's take a look at that. Yeah, let's try to find out where that step count is used. Is it anywhere here? I don't see that. So it must be in here. There it is. Step count mod 8. Ooh, that's a mess. Okay, so we have to change that variable. And we have to use the global variable. So I wonder how we do that. Let me do some research. Yeah, so I just ran the game and this crashes it. Okay, so we have to figure out how we're going to test a global variable. Okay, so my thinking here is since the variable is already global, you don't have to specify it specifically. Since we've made it global, now if we refer to it here, it'll be referring to the global one, but we can try it. I mean, you can always just try it and see if it works. If it crashes, then you know it didn't work. So I'm running the game and we'll see what happens. So I take a step. Yeah, see how it crashed? Oh, I guess you couldn't see it. So let me clear that again, and so you can actually see that. All right, so here's the game, and then I'm going to take a step, and instantly it crashes. So obviously this didn't quite work because it was looking for a variable called step count in Object Zool land, which doesn't exist. It's now global. So yeah, how do we fix this? I guess what we have to do is get the global variable and store it into a temporary variable. So let's grab that here. I'm going to pull this out. See, in the target is this temporary variable. So we're going to get our global variable, and it's called step count. This is kind of kludgy. Kludge is like code that you have to put in, but you're not proud of it because it doesn't quite work. Our target variable is called temp. It's a temporary variable, so we'll just check that so it goes away. We don't want it to belong to the object. We just want it to go away after this event handler is complete. And then, instead of step count here, we can just say temp. And then the program shouldn't crash. So we're just temporarily storing the step count in the temporary variable, and then what we're doing is using that variable to see if we should make the footstep sound. So let's try this again. I'm going to save it in case bad things happen. Okay, so here's my game. Don't crash. Oh, it crashed. Darn it. So what's our problem? I think I know. And this is a common mistake people make. Is that the step count is initialized or created in the controller's create event. But what we forgot to do is put the controller actually in the room. So let's do that. Where's our room? Here's our room. So we find our controller object and we bring it into our room. And we want to put someplace where you might see it, maybe here. Oh, we got to be in instances layer. Let's try one more time. Object controller into the room. Yeah, see, it puts a little question mark there because it doesn't have a sprite. So that's so you can actually see it. If you hovered over it, the old version used to tell me what object that was. Right now, it's not saying that. So let's see if that fixes the problem. Okay, here's our game again, and the hope is that when we move, we won't crash. Oh, we won't crash. There we go. Whew, so we got past that problem. But that was a challenge. All right, so now we've got the steps working. We've got the step count relocated over in the controller now. We've got the controller in the room. Next thing we have to do is we want to add our first hazard, and we're going to create a spike hazard. And so this is in the hazards group. Let's see if we have a sprite for it. Let's see. Do we have any hazards down here? We don't have them any yet. I think we have the sprites, so hopefully. Yeah, hazards. Yeah, here's the spikes. So we have those. And we're going to do a create object. So we have the sprites, but we do want to create the hazard, and that's under objects. So we're going to make a group called hazards. So add group, say hazards. Now we have our hazards group, and we can add a new object. And we'll call it object hazard. So this is going to be a parent class for all the hazards in the game. I would imagine. That's all you need is just to create it. It doesn't have a sprite because it's never going to be used in the game other than acting as a parent for all the hazards. So all it has to do is really exist. Now it exists. Next we're going to make object spike left. So let's do that. Which sprite do we use? Oops. We don't want to create a sprite. So I think it magically created that for some reason. I'm going to close that and delete it. Looks like it went away. So we want a load sprite. That's new sprite. Where's load? Here. We go to hazards. It's not the sprite we want. Hazards, and then spike left. That one. So we got it. And doesn't need any actions, just like hazard. Let's give it a name though. Object spike left. Okay. Now we can duplicate this object as well. So you can say duplicate. And here we're making the right one. I'm just trying to save a little typing. We'll switch to the right sprite for hazards. This is right. Yeah. And then finally, there's a sprite for up as well. So we're going to create one of those objects. Oh, I didn't duplicate, so object spike up. We'll choose our up spikes. And now we have our spikes in place. Now we go to Object Zool. So we're back to Object Zool. We've got our spikes. And now what we want to do is look at the create event. And there's this change instance action that we need to look at. So let's do that. I'm going to close that down. See there, instance change. So before we do that, we want to set a variable called hurt and set it equal to false. So we're just going to say hurt. This is a new variable that we haven't created, so it'll magically create it here. And we'll set it to false. It's a Boolean variable, has two different possibilities, either true or false. And what we're saying here is, if they're standing on the spike, we don't want to continually hurt him. So we want to, if he's already hurt by the spikes, we don't want to keep taking away points or taking away lives because he's continually colliding with the spikes. We don't want the spikes to disappear. So we need to keep track of whether he's hurt to give the user a time to move away from the hazard so that it doesn't continually take points away or take lives away. All right. So we have this new variable. Now we go to... we need to go to the collision event. Is this object Zool? I can't tell. I suppose so. Yeah, object Zool. So we're going to add a collision event with object hazard. And let's see. Yeah, so object hazard. And if hurt is set equal to false, so we have to ask a question. So let's go here. We say if the variable is hurt, and if the value is false. Another way you could say this, if he's not hurt, in English, I suppose. So what do we do? Well, this is interesting. All right, so what we have to do here is if Zool hits a spike, we want him to jump back. It depends horizontally what direction what direction he was moving. So if he was moving to the right, we want Zool to jump backwards to the left. If he's coming in from the right and hitting into spikes, then we want to jump back to the right instead of the left. And then if he is just falling straight down on top of like an up sprite, it will just shoot him up in the air. So how do we do all this? Well, first of all, we want to set we want to do a test variable here. So here we did hurt. If hurt is true, then we have another test we have to do. So that would be here. The variable is actually a statement or a conditional statement, and we're saying as if the absolute value of the h speed is larger than 1, that means they're moving horizontally in a certain direction, either left or right. We want Zool to jump back diagonally. Okay. So we want to jump in the direction, the opposite direction, which Zool is facing. So we would say, let's see, horizontal speed, H speed. That's animation speed. Looks like we might have to go to execute code here. So let's do that. We'll jump into GML. So that would be here. And minimize that. So what code do we want to say? We'll set H speed equal to the opposite of the direction he's facing. So minus facing times 4. And so that'll make him jump back. It's supposed to be a times. Okay, so that's the first thing we have to do. We also want him to jump upward, so we'd set the vertical speed equal to -18. That'll make him go up. Remember, y is upside down. We also want to play a sound. And so I can't remember how to do that, though, in GML. So maybe we switch back to drag and drop. Let's do that. So at the bottom of this, then, we're going to look for play sound. Here, play audio. We'll attach this to the bottom here. What do we want to play? We want to play the Hertz sound. So I'm looking at my sounds here. I don't see it. It means we don't have it. That means we have to create it. Okay, so we're adding Hertz sound, and we say create sound. We'll call it sound Hertz. And then go and find the actual recording. Looks like I have it here. Hertz. Play it. Yeah, it's a funny sound. And then we don't want it to repeat or loop over and over. Say mono. I think that's all we need there. So now the sound exists. So now we can go back to our object we were working on, which was was it object Zool land? I can't remember now. Let's see. Or is it object Zool? I think it's object Zool. Yeah. So what sound do we play? The Hertz sound. We don't want it to loop. So he makes the noise, and then next thing we want to do is we want to say that let's set global variable. We want to say that he's heard. So we're looking for set variable. Our variable is hurt. And we want to set that equal to true because he just got hurt. And then next thing we want to set an alarm. And we want to set it for 3 seconds or 90 steps. I think our root speed is 30, so that's 90 steps. So let's see what the alarms look like. Here's set alarm. So it's a countdown timer. It's alarm 0, and we're going to change it to 90. So each object can have its own set of alarms. This first alarm is called alarm 0. We're setting it to 90. What else do we need to do? We need to take one away from Zool's health. So here's set health, and here we say -1, and we say relative, because we want to add a -1, was similar to subtracting 1. And then once we do that, we're going to change Zool, since he's up in the air now, because we just shot him up in the air, we're going to change him to object Zool air. So this is change object. Yeah, change instance. What are we changing it to? We're changing to object Zool air. There's no perform events. I wonder why. And so all of this happens as part of I've got my mouse problem again. Yeah, all of this is like a big block of code that gets executed when the absolute value is greater than 1. So, so that's a lot of stuff. Now, if the absolute value of the h speed is not larger than 1, say it's 1 or it's 0, it doesn't do anything. That doesn't make sense to me, but we'll see what happens, I guess. Now, what should happen when the alarm goes off? Well, this is interesting. We set the alarm, we set the health, we do the change instance. The alarm is on object Zool, but we change objects. But since object Zool is the parent, yeah, maybe the alarm will survive. I'm surprised that the alarm will survive switching objects. I hadn't seen that before. All right, so next thing we do is we need to take care of that alarm event. What happens when the alarm goes off? I guess this is an object Zool. So let's create that event here. We say add event, alarm 0. So what happens when alarm 0 goes off? Well, first thing we want to do is we want to set hurt to false, because it's been 3 seconds. So if he stands on a spike for 3 seconds, it's going to get hurt again. Is basically the ID here. And then we're going to open up the draw event. And in the draw event, we're going to do a test variable. We're going to check to see if hurt is equal to true. So we got all this stuff. Wow. Question is, where do you put it? Yeah, so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make Zool blink when he's hurt. And so we don't want to draw the sprite, regardless of which state Zool is in. We don't want to draw the sprite all the time, just every once in a while. Basically, we want him to be flashing so that you know that he's hurt and that he can't be hurt anymore by hazards, I guess. So where do we put that? These image index helpers are, we had to do some kludgy coding in here to get the walking thing to work. So I'm going to take out the debug messages for now, because I'm tired of looking at them. I think they're all gone. Yeah. So for facing right, yeah, I think so. We have to put the code up here at the top. We're going to have to be careful here. Especially careful. So I want to see more of the code. And we have a lot of indenting to do, it seems, as well. So we say if what do we say? If hurt is equal to true. So a lot of people, when they do this, they say hurt equal true, which is redundant because hurt already is a value of either true or false. So you can just say if hurt, because that's already a Boolean, and that's what the condition needs. So if you're hurt, then you want to then check to see if this is, we're going to use the step count and see if this is every 6 steps, we're going to just not draw a sprite. And so you'll see Zool flash, because every once in a while he'll be invisible. So we got to get the global step count again. Question is, how do we get that? Now we're in GML, so it's going to be a little bit harder. So what I've been able to ascertain is, I guess they're still using that global prefix, so we'll keep doing that. And so we'll say if global dot step count. Yeah, there it actually sees it. Mod 6. So every 6 steps is equal to 0, 2 equal signs. So if it's evenly divisible by 6, remember the mod operator just divides the step count by 6 and returns the remainder. So if you get a remainder of 0, that means the step count is evenly divisible by 6. So every 6 frames, you want it to not draw or draw. Maybe it's not equal to 6. Let's see what the what it should be set to. Yeah, I think what they want us to do here is, and I don't particularly like this, so I'm going to say not equal to 0. That means it's not evenly divisible by 6. So in those cases, we want to actually draw it. And that'll happen more often. So now I have to indent all of this code because we just added 2 ifs at the top. Of course, I can't see what I'm doing, so these windows are rather annoying. Oh, great. What's that? I like to do them as a group. So I'm tabbing all of this in. I think I have to do it twice. Yeah, one more time. Notice that I selected it all and hit the tab key now. In normal editors, not program editors, when you do that, it replaces everything with a tab. But in a programming editor, what it does is just scoots things over. So you use your tab key to do that. Because we did this, we're going to have to put some closing curly braces so we have the right number. See how it's confused there at the bottom. So 1 and then close the other. What do we do in the case where the global step count is not or is equal to something other than 0? Then we do this stuff. Otherwise, we just leave. If he's hurt, we don't do anything at all. Or if he's hurt, we go in. Does that make sense? We check to see if hurt is equal to true. If he's hurt, this is interesting. Okay, so like I said, it's not making sense to me. Basically what we're saying is if he's hurt and yeah, we're trying to say if he's hurt and the global step count is evenly divisible by 6, then we don't want to do anything. Otherwise, we actually want to draw. So what do we do to change the code to do that? Here, we're going to do a compound conditional statement, and that will save some time. So if you're hurt and you say and, that's called logical and. It's a logical and operator. It means and, right? 2 ampersands. And then what we'll do is we'll copy this equation and put it there. And we're going to say two equal signs instead of not equal. So what does that do? Well, if this is true, if he's hurt and the global step count is evenly divisible by 6, then we don't want to do anything. We don't want to draw. So what needs to happen is we need to exit this this code block. So typically the word is exit. It's a keyword, yeah. And that will stop all execution of this execute code block and jump to the end. So put the right symbol here. So that means this indentation thing that we did, we don't need to do. This is kind of like an else part, but if it gets past an exit, notice I'm not saying else. It's because if you exit, there's no point. You don't have to do anything more. So here we'll indent these twice again and get rid of these two things we added. Oops, it's complaining. So maybe I counted wrong. Yeah. So let's see. Kind of get rid of this one. See what that looks like. So I'm just going up here to make sure the indentation looks correct. Yeah, it looks right. And it's not complaining at the bottom, so yeah, everything matches up. Okay, so sorry for all the confusion there. Basically, the way they were doing it before wasn't very efficient, and so I think this will be better. So what do you do to test this, I guess, is the next question. So let's try this. We're going to add spikes to the room now. So let's go to our room. Where's our room? Room, here it is. Where's a good place for spikes? Yeah, I think there's some here. So we can put in, say, right spikes right there. That makes it hazardous. Maybe these are just temporary, but we want to try each kind of sprite. I'm recognizing we've made another mistake. We'll hit that in a second. Is that the right sprite? No, it's not. So I'm going to delete that. Let's go out again and we'll look at. Let's look at this one. Is that right or left? Yeah. So we need, I guess, the left sprite over here if we're going to put it on that side. So drag that over. Here's left. And then maybe we put, I don't know, we put an up sprite, spike right here. Maybe, that'd be annoying. Maybe right here. So that Zool has to jump over that each time he gets to it. So now we have the three types of sprites. But what we'll find is, if we play the game right now, you see that Zool is flashing like he's hurt right now, and we haven't done anything. So there's still a problem with our way we're drawing things. Let's go check that out. Yeah, so I moved that up here, but I forgot to get rid of this one. So we have to get rid of that. So again, it's more confusion, but we have to outdent this. Now, how did I move it out? That's a good question. Well, in programming editors, you can do a Shift tab. So hold down the Shift key and tab, and it will move it back one level. We'll get rid of that extra curly brace. And now he shouldn't be flashing. So let's try that again. All right, so he's not flashing. That's good. And then we're going to see See, we're going to collide with one of these spikes. I'm going to just stand on this one. Notice how he's not getting hurt. It's not flashing. He's not jumping up. What did we forget to do? Well, what we forgot to do is we forgot to make our spikes a child of the hazard object. We made this parent class, but we didn't set the parent on these spikes. So we need to do that. So here's spike left. Here's parent. And we're going to choose the hazard, the parent class for the hazard. Here's spike right. It too has to have the same parent. Hazard, object hazard, and then spike up, same thing. We're setting the parent, which object, object hazard. Play the game again. All right, so here's the game. Let's go find our. I have to click in the window to get it to work. Let's go stand on a. See how we touch it, which shoots us backwards. Shoots us in the opposite direction we were moving. This one, that was interesting. It took a little time for the collision to happen. See, I'm trying to see if they're flashing. I think it's lining up. Okay, let's try climbing here. Yeah. So it looks like the left one works. Let's try the right one. Yeah. So yeah, that's looking good. My question is, if you stand right on top of it and not moving, it just picks one of the directions. I guess that's all right. So I guess we've got that mechanism working. All right, so that's enough for today. Kind of a long video, sorry. But we did get hazards built. We've got the spikes working. And we've got Zool reacting to the hazards and looking pretty good.